Tina, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Anything that has to do with joy, I'm so excited. We need more of that.
Wonderful. Tina, you work with high performers who fear slowing down will cost them their edge. What's your advice for reframing rest as a strategy, not as a setback?
Yeah. Oh boy. That's a good question. I love to answer that question because, especially when it comes from experience, having experienced burnout myself and just all of what taking a break did for me, I thought, oh, I just needed time to rest. And sometimes when we go and rest, maybe take some days off or some weeks off, we don't really think about the importance of changing how we work as well. Is as we're thinking about how we rest, we have to be thinking about how we work, or else when we get back from that rest, we're going to go straight back to burnout if we don't change the conditions under which we work. And so, one of the important parts for me, and I I say that from someone who is very high functioning like I am. I used to see rest as, oh my God, I don't even have time for that. I have all of these things to do. I have to finish them. Many of them have deadlines. And resting just felt like it wasn't in the calendar until I fully burned out. And when I did that, that's when it hit me, that sometimes you have to understand what the signs are before you fully burn out. That's why the rest is a strategy. Because if you start to see the signs early on and you pay attention, regardless of what your workload is, and you say, listen, this work is going to get done with or without me. I need to take care of myself right now and not think that I'm indispensable because if anything happens, I will be replaced. Right. And so many times, especially whether, I don't know, it could be whether you're working in a company or even working for yourself, you have to be able to identify the signs. And for me, it was like heart palpitations. I would have like this headaches on the left side of my head and it'll be recurrent. Or it'll be me getting numb about things I used to get excited about. Or the things that I'm exceedingly great at, I will struggle with them. For example, I was looking at one of the signs that I had was I was looking at a Google Doc for over 30 minutes, just reading it, and I still couldn't tell you what it meant. And so I kept looping, and it just didn't feel like it was myself because I will grasp it very quickly. But in this instant, I'm here struggling to even get the meaning of what I'm studying, and I'm just on page one for 30 minutes. So in that instant, I catch that sign and I'm like, okay, this is an early sign telling me rest. I have to rest. The strategy is if I rest now, then I don't burn out later. And then the work doesn't suffer more than it has to. But if I don't rest now and I burn out, I might actually have to go off the work longer than I want to, and the work could suffer even more. So that's what I meant when I talked about treating rest like a strategy, and not like an inconvenience, because it really isn't. Our bodies are the only thing that we have, to be legal here on earth. And if anything happens and we don't take care of our health, anything happens to this body, we have to go. And if the body packs up and says, well, I cannot continue, your spirit cannot just hover around. Your spirit needs a body to function on earth. And so we have the responsibility to take care of this body so that we can, to the best of our abilities, right? So that we can do as much work as we know we've been called to do here on earth.
I want to dive deeper into what resetting and recharging is all about. Can you give us some specific tips that you believe could work optimally for someone that really wants to protect their physical and their mental energy?
Burnout starts in the mind. It doesn't start in the body first. It starts in the mind. And usually, once the mind is taken, the body follows, right? And there are instances where you could sleep for 8 hours, even 10 hours, and you wake up still exhausted, still tired. Your body just is not feeling like your body. And so there's a myriad of factors that come into play when you start to think about why somebody is burned out. Many times it's usually, like I said, it starts in the mind, but when you start to ask them key questions, you realize that some of them say things like, I don't like what I'm doing with my life, or I don't like my job. I don't like the fact that I cannot share my ideas. So it could be different things for people who feel like they're in an environment that does not allow them to voice their ideas. They always have to hold those ideas in. What happens is they start to feel a dissatisfaction on the inside of them. And that dissatisfaction starts to turn into doubt, starts to turn into unfulfillment, starts to turn into all kinds of feelings that get them questioning who they are, why they're here, what I'm doing doesn't feel like what I should be doing with my life. So usually the end game of recovering from burnout, the way that I see it, is to recover, rest, recover, and return to the most optimal version of you. Because what happens is a lot of people will say, oh, I just need to sleep. I just need to take care of my body. But you're not thinking about your mind. You're not thinking about the fact that you can sleep all you want, but you can also wake up really tired. And so I recently made a post about 30 signs that you might be burned out as a high functioning person. And one of those signs is you can sleep 8 hours and wake up still exhausted. And so many times I tell people it's not just I need to sleep and take care of my body, is that I need to start at, sit down and ask myself some core questions about why I'm feeling like this. And usually it takes you to the root of what's causing your mind to feel that way, that's affecting your body. And so it's a whole system. It's like a whole return framework that helps you really get back to optimal you. The part of you that is when you step out, you're like, yes, this is who I am and this is what I should be doing. People who find themselves there are always joyful, are always happy. There's always a reason to feel like my life is where I want it to be. And so what I will say is getting people not just retreats or wellness apps, but actually really getting them an opportunity to sit and get this framework where they're asked all these questions and they can really dig deep and go back to certain things that maybe even their subconscious had locked away, especially regarding when it comes to identity, when it comes to satisfaction with your work, when it comes to just those things really add up to what causes burnout.
If someone is struggling with a sense of direction or purpose in their lives, where do you suggest that they start?
So I used to have 4 core questions that I would ask people. I started by asking those questions myself, and they sound very simple and maybe non-effective, but those questions will literally lead you to a lot of things. They unlock for you why you're here, why you're doing this, why you thought this is what you should be doing. Just different things happen. Normally I ask, what do I love to do? What am I good at? What is the one thing or 2 things or 3 things that I love to do and that I'm also good at? Because one of the things that happens with people when I talk to them about burnout is they're either doing something they're good at but that they hate, or they're doing something that they love but they're not good at. It's always something, but when you can find the core things that you both love and you're good at, it gives you a sense of meaning and a good sense of identity as well. And the 4th question is usually, how can I, with what I love to do and what I'm good at, how can I create a system that gives back and that also helps me prosper? So it's 4 simple questions that unlock a layer of questions once you start talking to people. And usually when you bring it up, people are like, oh yeah, okay, what do I love? Oh, I love hosting people. Oh, I love ice cream. So normally when I ask people that question, I always say, don't overthink the answer. Just write down the first thing that comes to your mind when you're saying to yourself, Tina, what do you love? I actually love playing the guitar. I love starry nights. I love ice cream. Don't overthink the answer. Write every single thing you love, even if it's like 100 things. And then get to the question of what am I good at? Write every single thing you feel like you're good at, right? Then where there's that intersection is when you say, okay, out of everything on my list, what are the core ones, maybe 2 or 3, that I am both good at and that I love? And then that really narrows down the list and actually gives you focus. So now you know these are the things that I'm good at and I love. Now, how can I couple them in a way that gives back and that also helps me feel like I'm prospering, like living the life that I've always dreamt of living? And so usually it could be a 6 system sort of walkthrough with whoever it is, and then they finally arrive at these answers, and then we get deeper. Okay, so why am I not doing it? Or if I'm doing it, why am I not doing it at this capacity? And you start to unlock answers that you otherwise will not even ask yourself until somebody else asks you, and you're like, oh my God, I never even thought to ask myself that, right? Those 4 questions always now lead up to the other key questions that unlock the knowledge that you need to really understand why you're feeling burned out.
Tina, you've written a book, The Teen CEO, which equips young people to create jobs instead of just seeking them. What advice would you give to a teen, Gen Z, or even a millennial that may be listening to our conversation so they can start creating jobs?
Yeah, I work very closely with teens, and one of the things I always say to them is no matter what you think your dream is, it's not too big. And it sounds very cliche, but many of them have told me, I say, what do you want to do when you grow up or when you graduate? And they say these things, but when you look at their faces, they say like they don't believe it can happen. It's like, oh, this is what I really want to do. And I'm like, and do you know that you can actually begin to think about starting that thing as a business that grows beautifully, that even before you graduate, you might already have something that doesn't require you to go out there into the workforce to start looking for jobs. And they look at me like, is that even possible? I'm like, yes, it is possible. And so one of the key things that I'm doing now is really partnering with nonprofits that run programs or initiatives for young people, but also colleges and even high schools and universities that have any sort of initiatives. And we're like, okay, how can we not just give them this knowledge, but how can we also equip them to implement? Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And first of all, the resource has to be as enjoyable to read and digest as possible. And so even with my Teen CEO book, which is the resource that I published this year, I wanted to come in with my own experience, give them an understanding of what I felt when I was their age, some of the things that I thought were impossible, just like they're thinking it's impossible. And then giving them all of the information that they need about business. How do you start one? How do you even ideate? How do you know which one is the right business to start? How do you manage the money when the money starts to come in? How do you invest? How do you choose your niche, choose your market? All of those information in there, but in their own sort of lingo, in a way that they understand, and it's fun to read and fun to assimilate. And so the goal and the dream is hopefully to build it to a point where partners actually come on board to even finance some of these business dreams and ideas that the teenagers have, and just set them on a path to growing a business that does very well before they even graduate. Of course, in a way that does not affect their school performance while they're still in high school or wherever they are. And I told somebody that I had a meeting with just a few minutes ago, I said, listen, the reason that this is important is in the next 10, 20, 30 years, teenagers will now become our leaders. We will now be subject to whatever policies they write. They will be leading our industries, leading our government, leading our companies, leading our industries. And so how are we equipping them with all the resources they have so that when they get there, we don't suffer because we have given them all they need. And every time I think about how many baby boomers are being affected by policies that were written by Gen Xers, for example, because now you're older and I would say a little bit, a little fragile. Like you're not as strong as you used to be when you were younger. Now, these ones that were really young have now they're now in their 30s, in their 40s. We have grown into our 60s and 70s. We are more frail and we're more dependent on them now. And so my passion is really, how do we help them become the leaders that we want them to be tomorrow? in a way that we can beat our chest and rest and say we did our path. We did our part rather in helping them come up to be the leaders that we need. So that's what this is about for me, and it's still ongoing work. It's an ongoing project and just something I'm really passionate about.
Tell us more about your own personal journey because I really love the energy you're bringing forward and the passion you have.
As a young person, I was always the girl that everyone thought was too mature for my age. I remember people would say, "Oh my God, you're so mature, like you think like an adult." And I remember I was gifted. I don't remember who gave me this gift, if it was my aunt or just a church member, but somebody gave me a pink diary. And I remember I would always sit on my bed and write all these ideas of all the great things I wanted to do in the world. As I write them down, there was a part of me that would say, because I mean, I wasn't born to wealthy parents or anything like that. So there was always a part of me that would say, how are you even going to get it done? Like, all of these massive dreams. And I'm talking like the things I was writing, I was talking global, you know? And at that time, I was just a young girl in Nigeria, still studying, teenage. I was probably 14, 15 at this time, and I still have that diary. And so I remember knowing what I wanted to achieve in the world, but not having the resources, not having what I would call a roadmap, because I don't have entrepreneurial parents. I don't really have so many entrepreneurial cousins or anything like that. So I didn't have a blueprint. And so what I realized since I started working with teenagers, when I hear that their ideas, one of the things I realized was actually these teens are just like me. They remind me of me having these awesome ideas, no roadmap, no blueprint. So I decided that what I wanted to do was put a resource together that I wish 15-year-old Tina had. That if I had this resource, I would have known what to do, whether I had mentors or family members that were entrepreneurs or not, that resource would have helped me. So that's literally what I put together. And it's interesting because a lot of people have bought it, a lot of people have read it. These are adults who say, what? This book isn't just for teenagers. Even we need it. Like we adults need it. And I love that. And everyone, kept talking about just how the message was delivered, how fun, how well researched and well written it was, and just how much knowledge is in there for the young people. But like I shared, my teenage journey to now getting this book written for other teenagers is for me more about even execution than just giving them the knowledge. I want them to be able to execute what they learned in the book. Hence the reason for some of the partnerships I'm pursuing to see how we can make it happen.
When you're looking at the mental health crisis that we have within the younger generation, what do you believe is essential to change in order to reverse the trend that is just showing year over year a deterioration in mental health of the younger generation and even an increase in suicide rates?
I think one of the things that I feel like one of the things we need to do, and I do know that there are people who are doing this or working in that regard, but we don't have enough of them. We don't have enough hands. And what I'm talking about is the influence of social media. The truth is, there's a lot of research to prove that most of what we see regarding mental health comes from there, but also experiences from home. And, many times we don't create spaces for teenagers to come and just be and just talk. I knew this from working with a nonprofit 2 years ago. And I was working with them and they were running an 8-week program for African girls, but between the ages of 13 and 19. And what I did realize was every time we came together, as much as we were bringing them together to teach them about just, vulnerability and social responsibility and just emotional intelligence and just normal things that a good human being should know who will be contributing to society, there will be many times that they will say, can I confide in you about this, this, this? And when you sit with them and you talk to them, you realize that they actually don't have anybody back home to have that conversation with. And so I said to the person who was the convener of that 8-week program, I said, you have something here. And maybe you want to pay more attention to that. The fact that they were more comfortable sharing with us strangers and needing our help and our guidance and our discipleship and mentorship to say, this is what is happening. And they will be forthcoming. Many of them were forthcoming to say, I can't talk to my dad about this. I can't talk to my mom about this. So what I realized is that we don't have enough spaces that make it easy for them to open up and say, this is what I'm dealing with. And many times they can't do it in school. The teachers are not, they're busy doing other things, they already have their work cut out for them. And so if we have more spaces that make it easy for us to have conversations like this with them, we can detect, early when someone has a mental health issue. We can already start to see the signs. We can already start to think about, how we can partner with professionals to help them. Things like that. I believe that there's lots of bodies already doing this, but like I said, we need more allies. We need more hands when it comes to that, because honestly, the mental health crisis is very worrisome. It's really, really sad. But that's just one solution. There's so many other solutions that we can actually discuss too.
What is your view on the impact that AI will have on these younger generations? And are there specific tips on how to utilize responsibly and optimally AI in order to ensure that the younger generations are really building their self esteem and growing in this AI world?
Yes. So one of the things I always say is, because of the age that we're in, so much, it's the information age. It's just more and more and more information. If you were born as a millennial and date back to other generations, pre-millennial generation, we were not necessarily born into this type of technology. In fact, we were almost not born into any kind of technology. And then technology came at, there was already technology. That's what I mean is just the vastness of it now, the availability of it now. I didn't have that in my first 15 years of life. So now I have to grow into it. I have to learn it. I have to adapt to it. However, this other generation, they were born into it. It's what they know. So they have a different way of even seeing things and approaching life from that lens than we do. And so one of the things that I always say is, then it honestly needs to be regulation when it comes to caregivers, parents, teachers, because of how decentralized the internet is. AI itself, as decentralized as it is, we cannot really control the effects that it has on these young ones. But if we have some sort of regulation as either older friends, like I have a lot of young teenage, I like to call them my friends. I mentor them, but I also like to say, listen, I'm your friend as well. You can talk to me about anything. So when I take on a role as an older friend to say, okay, this and this and this are what you have to be careful about when it comes to AI. And then parents do that. And then teachers do that, or just any other form of guide or counselor does that. I feel like we can do so much good, because as AI continues to advance, honestly, nobody can. A lot of people have predictions, but to be honest, we don't really know what the effects will be at whatever scale it will be, right? But I feel like in our own little way, we can begin to really look at the teenagers in our life and take them under our wings and help them to understand the good and the bad of AI. This is how you can use it responsibly. This is how you shouldn't use it responsibly. This is how you can detect if it's being used for something illegal or something dangerous or something like they need to know more and more. And honestly, sometimes I even think they know more than us, in my opinion. But what can the part that we bring is not even the technical part. Sometimes what we bring is experience that they don't have, years of experience that we've had before they were even born. Sometimes it's experience we bring, sometimes it's wisdom we bring, sometimes it's just when we look at something from that lens of having been in this world before them, we could bring that, because they might even know much more than AI than we do. And so, but just helping them understand the pros and the cons of how you use it and how you should not engage and why this is important and why that is important. I think that's the least we could do. I don't know that anybody can categorically say this will be the effect, but we could do what we could do in our own little ways.
Is there a mantra or a piece of advice you have received in the past that has really shaped the work that you do today?
As a Christian, my faith is the most important part. And one mantra that I have is let your light so shine. And the reason I say this is everyone has light in them. And sometimes the light dims, whether based on experiences that we have that are painful or unpleasant things that people said to us, or just things that happened that did not really fit into our plans or our dreams for ourselves. And sometimes we can dim the light and we can sort of keep it in darkness, right? And my faith, the scriptures say, you don't turn on a lamp or a candle and put it under the table. What you do when you turn on the lamp or the candle is you put it on the stand so that everybody in the room can see, so that it lights up the whole room and everybody in the room can see. So that's what I've lived by, is in my own little way. And in the work that I do, I try to let my light shine, pretty much.
This brings me actually to the topic of joy. And if there would be a recipe for living more joyfully, what would be the three main ingredients in your view?
The first one, obviously, I always go back to Jesus. I honestly don't know how far I would have come if I didn't walk this path, honestly. So normally when I feel stressed and I feel sadness and I feel grief of any kind, I always want to center myself back into who I am, when I am in connection with God, and what that's doing to my spirit. And that always spills over to every other thing about me, my relationships, my work, my dreams, my ambition. It always comes back to that. Another thing that I say gives me joy is just being around people. I love people a lot. And so usually what happens is my husband and I are exactly the same when it comes to that. And so at home, we just want to have people over and host them and make them happy and give them a safe space to do whatever, whether it's to talk or, to share something, just people. I always find that when I do that, I just have so much joy. It continues to radiate for weeks on end. And the third thing, or the last thing I would say, I think just really knowing that I'm beginning to settle into my purpose in life, really understanding that, yes, I have been in corporate for about 12 years. I've done all this good work. Yes, I was good at those things, but I didn't love them. Pretty much. They were not the thing that I felt like I was called to do. So one thing that's also given me joy in my life now is really seeing that I'm beginning to settle into what I've been born to do here on earth. So those three things I would say.
So how would you articulate your purpose today?
Oh, so the way that I see it is that I have it in two folds. The first fold is really helping people who are like calling people back from burnout into their highest functioning self, but not just that, helping them to fully recover from burnout. Because like I said in the beginning, burnout is not just the fact that you're doing so much work. What really happens usually, that's the underlying thing, is that you're mentally feeling displaced. So when we're calling you back from burnout, we actually want to help you lead, build, and just do whatever much better. And to do it with excellence as well as courage, but to make sure that you also don't return back to burnout. So that's the first. And I really focus on high functioning people because I am high functioning and I know and understand that burnout in high functioning people is very silent. And if you're not paying attention to the signs, it creeps up on you until it's almost too late. And then the second fold is working with younger people, the teenagers, which I consider the next generation of leaders. I'm really helping them develop something that's worth building, something that contributes to their society, their communities, their families, themselves, but also helps them live a prosperous and fruitful life. So if that means helping them build a business, helping them start up anything that really contributes in that way to them and the people around them, yes. So those two folds are where I'm focused now.
Any final words of wisdom you may wish to share with our audience in terms of living more joyfully and purposefully?
Yeah, it sounds simple, but really always check in with yourself. I realized that for the longest time, up until early adulthood, even up until my 30s, I didn't have the habit of checking with myself. It was almost like I didn't exist to myself. I was existing for other people. I wanted to be the best wife, best mom, best friend, best employee, and all of those things. And it's like when you neglect yourself, what happens is you lock away some parts of yourself in your subconscious, and sometimes you don't even really know who you are. And also, not checking with yourself is what actually leads to burnout many times. And so normally that's what I usually tell people. So I guess that would be the wisdom that I leave with today, is learn to check in with yourself, really, every day. It's like the temperature of where you're at and understanding how things are moving. Usually, if you could do that, you will never be burnt out. Never. Because you will really answer key questions that need to be answered before things get bad.
Tina, it's been an immense pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea. I enjoyed talking to you today.